Playing on the computer, the boy says that he is now on his third attempt to survive the zombie apocalypse. He says he hopes to get a good weapon this time and acquires a bat. He feels confident because ammunition is limited and guns attract a lot of zombies. If he were in an apocalypse, he would choose a bat every time. Suddenly, he sees something on the screen and the crazy guy does a reverse push-up on the chair. However, he did all this for $0.76. I take back what I said because the fool fell to the floor like an idiot and hit his head. However, at the same moment, Chiensu got up and asked the guy if he liked that. The guy named only one asked what he was doing and said he was dead. That's when he realizes his character had been killed and apologizes to the live stream for it. However, he says it's okay because he reached the checkpoint and now with this item it will be easy, so he just needs to try again. Meanwhile, only one calls out to Chiensu and asks if he is really having fun when he is the only person watching the stream. Our boy falls silent for a second. His name is Chiensu. He is a streamer and replies that only one doesn't need to say such things, adding that he can only live off live streaming because this guy is always there. The guy asks if that's true and says that if it is, he chooses him. Chiensu is confused by this, but thanks him for choosing. Suddenly, the entire room starts shaking and he stands up asking what's happening. There's a huge explosion and he asks the live stream if anyone heard that. Immediately, he runs to the window and sees the entire city in flames. People are running and he tells the live stream that something is wrong. That's when he sees his computer has turned off and won't turn back on. He is confused and decides to go outside to see what's happening. As soon as he is on the street, a woman runs past him and he calls out to her. However, she just glances at his face and runs away desperately. He is confused about why she is fleeing when suddenly several messages appear in his view. Some messages say he looks very silly, and others ask why they chose such a loser. At that moment, he is startled and asks why there is a chat window in front of him. People in the live stream start mocking him, imitating everything he says. As he tries to touch the chat, wondering if he is hallucinating from streaming for too long, some messages say he can't touch it, while others say something is coming for him. That's when he notices a zombie in front of him, and the chat says that now he will die. It was terrible watching a player as bad as him. Chiensu can't process this information when suddenly the zombie lunges at him. However, falling backward, he manages to kick it and retreat. He starts to run away and people in the live stream say that the zombie just wanted to shake hands. Desperate, he reaches his apartment and starts entering the code. However, the zombie immediately breaks through the glass. The creature's face is covered in blood and he starts climbing the stairs desperately, but the monster won't stop chasing him. He is already on the 7th floor and can't increase the distance between them. Finally, he sees the door to the roof and tries to open it, but unfortunately, it's locked. The zombie is climbing the stairs and the chat tells him to stop being stupid and push the door. With that, it finally opens and he closes it with his own body. The zombie was pounding on the door, but at least he could rest a little. On the roof, he was wondering why a zombie suddenly appeared and why there was a game-like chat in front of him. However, putting that aside, the goal now was to kill this monster. He needed a weapon and heard something behind him. When he looked, there was already a chubby guy approaching. He recognized him as the owner of the buildings and started to run. However, the fool tripped over a box and fell to the ground with the zombie closing in. As he tried to resist, someone in the chat mentioned there was a supply chest nearby. Chiensu looked to the side while the zombie was almost biting him. He kicked the creature back and it came running at him again. Chiensu shouted for the trash to die and moved to the side. With that, the zombie threw itself off the building, diving to another life. The chat was curious if he was lucky or had planned it. Exhausted, he fell to the ground, but it was little time because the zombies were starting to break the door. He noticed there were 3 of them, and the chat commented that many beginners always die this way. That's when he stumbled upon the chest and remembered the guy who asked if that was a supply box. He smiled, opened the chest that radiated light, and found the legendary bat. The chat called it the Excalibur of the Apocalypse as the zombies broke through the door to get to our boy. While he concentrated, everyone was betting that he would die. Smiling, our boy said that for him, the end of the world was just a game, and he charged forward. He swung the bat at the first zombie, but missed entirely. He found himself surrounded and began shaking the bat, telling the creatures to get away. Now everyone on the live stream started calling him a clown. The problem was that the zombies were so close that he couldn't swing the bat properly. While he was immobilizing one, another came from behind. He knew he had to dodge, so he dropped the bat and threw himself to the ground to avoid being bitten. The zombies were closing in from behind and he had no space to swing the bat. In that case, he broke free and the creatures attacked. He managed to get through and the chat marveled at how impressive he was. Back in his room, people were saying he was more impressive than they expected. However, Chiensu realized that both his computer and phone were not working. The chat asked where he was going and he said he was heading to his parents' house. With that, he was already speeding on his bike despite his age. He decided to ignore the chat for now and focus on his parents' safety. While he was checking how much gas he had left, something darted in front of his bike. He fell to the ground and people in the chat asked if that was a tongue. He saw the message and was confused. When he looked to the side, the chat informed him that it was a hellish frog. Chiensu was baffled. It wasn't a zombie, but a real monster. His thoughts were interrupted by a tongue lash, which he dodged. Someone in the chat commented about the tongue, and a ruler appeared, giving him an idea. He decided to run in a straight line into a tunnel, dodging another attack. Since the place had many curves, the monster wouldn't be able to hit him. At least he had brought some items that appeared to be intact. The frog cornered him, but the boy already had a Molotov in hand, taunting the damned frog to come at him. The chat commented on how brave he was when the frog headbutted, but he dodged. He set the rabbit on fire and threw it at the fool. The problem was it didn't do anything, so he threw another one in its face. Seeing this, the boy was sure the frog's weakness was from the inside out. He only had one more and would have to risk his life to make it work. Hiding behind a wall, he taunted the frog to come. The creature lashed out with its tongue, and he dodged. He grabbed the Molotov and threw it into the monster's mouth. It writhed in agony and fell back. The chat was now impressed that he risked his life to make this plan work. Watching the frog, he said it was finally over, but the chat told him to be careful. Someone commented that he was one of the best beginner players they had ever seen. Our boy wondered why they were commenting on his life as if it was all a game. However, he decided not to care if it was real or not and simply accept it. He told everyone he wouldn't die like an idiot. At that moment, he received an achievement and the ability to record his feats. Seeing the notification about receiving an ability, he was sure it was exactly like a game. So he asked to open the skills panel. The aggro skill made him stronger the more creatures were around him. The save record skill allowed him to gain part of the attributes of this ability as base attributes that he would always have available. He realized this ability was basically a request to throw himself into danger. He closed the panel, decided to ignore it for now, and resumed his quest to find his family. The problem was that his bike had been destroyed by the frog. He had to walk, and when he arrived, he couldn't believe his eyes. His house looked like it had been bitten by something gigantic. He entered desperately, calling for his mom and dad, questioning where they were. However, he couldn't find them anywhere. Then he remembered that his parents always left notes. He started walking around the house looking for any messages. Finally, in his room, he found a piece of paper. His dad had written that they were evacuating with the soldiers of Division 7.5 and that they would see each other soon. At least now he had a clue about where his parents had gone. The chat was mocking him for being abandoned by his parents like a fool. While he was talking to himself, he felt that something was wrong. That kind of message wasn't like the ones his dad usually left. However, he remembered that if this was really a game, this could be the start of the first main quest. He decided not to rush too much since he only had one clue so far. He went to the cupboard and found some canned sardines. The chat commented that he was too relaxed, and he replied that he needed to eat something first before figuring out what to do. Then he heard a sound near the house. There shouldn't be any creatures, so what happened? He walked calmly through one of the rooms and heard another sound. With that, he knew the direction and ran there. At the window, he found a zombie climbing up. He hit its hand and closed the door. This triggered the aggro skill. He had one creature in 10 minutes. He remembered that he could get 10% stronger for each enemy following him. He decided to test this out. In one of the doors, there was a zombie breaking through. He opened it and hammered it, increasing the aggro count to 2. The boy was enjoying this because he went to another door and took down the 3rd and 4th zombies. Then the 5th, 6th, and 7th. He didn't stop. He put everyone there to sleep for a bit. Looking at his own hand, he realized that this skill really made him much stronger. Then he heard a sound and realized it was coming from the kitchen. Since he only had 1 minute of aggro left, he had to finish it within that time. Slowly, he approached, and the chat asked who they thought would win. He looked down and saw a guy hiding under his table. A moment later, the guy, who apparently worked in a restaurant, was cooking. The chat thought he was very brave to let a stranger cook for him in his own house. The protagonist didn't know how to address the chat, so he called them brothers. He explained that he was fighting monsters on an empty stomach and needed something to eat. Not to mention, if this guy seemed dangerous for even a second, he would deal with it quickly. With that, the guy placed the plate on the table. Qiansu, feeling fully healed, thought it actually looked good. The long-haired guy asked if he liked it and mentioned that he was one of the chefs at the Mayang restaurant. The protagonist said that because of the commotion the guy caused, he had to fight a bunch of zombies. Just before, the guy was apologizing and begging not to be kicked out because of the zombies outside. Qiansu informed him that he would leave this place as soon as he finished his meal. The guy asked where he was going, and Qiansu said he was looking for information about his father. With that, another guy suggested they should head to the elementary school because it had become an emergency shelter. The protagonist thought that might be a good place to get information about his father. However, he started to wonder if this guy was a real person or some kind of NPC guiding him through the story. He agreed, and the guy introduced himself as Mingyu Zhang. Qiansu thanked him for the food and said it was time for them to go. He asked if Mingyu had any transportation, and Mingyu said no. Qiansu then mentioned they had a bike in the garage and said they would use that and gathered his things. Mingyu agreed and waited for him. Qiansu went back to his room, grabbed a hammer, and suddenly heard a scream. It was Mingyu's voice, and he ran outside to see what looked like a Titan zombie holding Mingyu. Mingyu cried for help, and the chat said it was the big-mouthed one. The protagonist knew that creature was much stronger than those zombie frogs from before. The chat mentioned it was probably the one that had bitten his house. With that, he started to run, and the chat warned that if he tried to help, he would die. The next moment, he was on the bike, fleeing the place. When he looked back, the creature had grown on him, and the 10-minute timer started. Hyunsu sped up the bike, but the monster was much faster than he thought. At this pace, he would be caught before passing it. Then he saw his friend's bike, which Mingyu had mentioned dropping. 2 more zombies had grown on him, and he threw himself to grab the friend's bike. With that, he accelerated, almost getting caught. The chat was impressed. The problem was that the monster was still beside him. But Hyunsu told the live stream that he wasn't the type to fall without a fight. The scene shifts to a group evacuating people, directing everyone to enter the school. A chubby guy says that Mingyu is still out there and they need to rescue him. The other guy just says he's probably dead and tells the chubby guy to get inside. A commotion starts with people saying they should wait a bit longer before closing the gates, but that a guy with a white bandana tells his friend that it's better for them to get inside for now. At that moment, they hear someone speeding up a motorcycle. It's our boy carrying something. People turn around, he comes to a stop. The guy causing the commotion looks scared. Seeing what he's carrying on the bike, everyone wonders if it's a body. He just smiles, and the chat says it seems like he loves to draw attention. The guy next to him recognizes it as Mingyu's bike and asks how he is. Our boy dryly says he's dead. The guy looks confused, asking for an explanation. Hyunsu just says there's nothing to explain and asks who the leader is there. A man seems to hear this, and as he's about to speak, another person approaches. A police department guy introduces himself as Seojin and says he's coordinating that area. Hyunsu gives his name, and Seojin asks if he really brought a piece of that monster. Hyunsu is surprised that Seojin knows about the creature. He explains that they lost a lot of people to that monster and asks what happened to it. Hyunsu says he killed it. Everyone is stunned, not believing that it's possible to kill such a thing. Back on the bike, he asked the chat if they wanted to bet that he would survive. They asked what he would bet, and the crazy guy said obviously his life. The monster was running and destroying all the buildings easily. The protagonist noticed that the monster didn't seem to get tired and turned to the chat, saying they would have to do him a favor if he survived. The chat started commenting that they wouldn't gain anything from this and knew he would fail. One asked what would happen if he didn't kill it, and he said in that case, he would die. The chat commented that if the plan was this crazy, he would accept. The same guy from before, only one was there saying the deal was made. Hyunsu smiled and sped towards the tunnel. The creature was approaching, but he told everyone they would have to keep the promise. The monster, running at 100 miles per hour, rammed into the tunnel. Hyunsu told the guy at the shelter he would explain more later, and that he was also looking for a safe place. Hyunsu says they first need to check if he is not infected. However, the townspeople say he is a hero and should be let in right away. So he gets in line, and after they verify he's not infected, he's about to leave when someone suddenly calls out to him. It's the guy from before, asking if Mingyu really died. Hyunsu says he already told them and asks if the guy knew him. The man replies that yes, he was the owner of the restaurant where Mingyu worked. Hyunsu then explains that they were together and had a plan, but that monster ruined everything they were trying to do. Grabbing the bike, he says he didn't steal anything and doesn't need to worry, and that the tofu soup Mingyu cooked was something he would never forget. The chat says that this man made the guy cook for him, and now he's acting all righteous. The shop owner is left speechless, and with that, Hyunsu leaves. As he approaches the school, he passes a blue suitcase, and a message appears saying he's leaving the tutorial. It explains that now he will have the information panel to help him stay alive. What catches Hyunsu's attention is the mention of a tutorial. There are also several messages saying that now everything will truly begin. He runs to a room and calls out for only one, explaining that there is a limit to how much he can handle without knowing anything. He reminds him that they made a bet, so he has to pay up. Only one asks what he wants to talk about. Hyunsu says it's time for him to start explaining what is going on. The chat is angry that he ignored everyone and asks if he received any explanations. Hyunsu says none at all. They are impressed that he is still alive and question how he seems to know so much. Hyunsu, confused, says it's his streamer instincts. The chat then comments that this is a very interesting detail. Someone mentions that if he wins the game, he can rebuild the world however he wants. Hyunsu is confused by this, and only one says that's exactly what they said. He explains that in this world, everything is real. The only thing they did was change a few details, but he is the only player. This group only likes to follow one person at a time, so he is the protagonist and the only one who interacts with them. Considering this, it can be said that the other people are somewhat like NPCs. However, only one advises him not to stress too much about the fact that it is the real world and to just treat them like viewers of his streams and keep winning the game. Hyunsu is overwhelmed by all this information and asks who they are. Looking to the side, he wonders if this guy is some kind of god or something. He looks at his reflection and asks if only one is a god. Only one says that's a stupid question to ask. What kind of character thinks about such things? He says he'll give just one hint that will help him. They like a guy who puts on a good show, so it's best for him to go all out and show everything he's got. Our boy remarks that it's a strange mission for someone who never leaves the house. He then remembers the information panel and opens it. It says that the first mission is to protect the police chief because if he dies tonight, the whole city will deteriorate. A little later outside, he is observing the people working. A guy asks if they should leave the food there, and another says yes. People are gathered in the courtyard and the police are giving some orders. Kiansu knows that out of the 150 people there, someone is a threat to the police chief. The officer announces that they will be providing food for everyone, so they should come closer. One of them calls the protagonist, but he ignores him, saying he's fine. He approaches a man who asks if he has a problem. He says he's there to see the police chief, and the man seems startled. By the man's lack of reaction, he questions if there's a problem, and the officer responds that he can't say. The chat comments that this seems suspicious, and Chiansu is sure something is being hidden. He points to the officer and asks if he can call for Department Chief Sujin Lee. The man converses with someone, seeming to ask for permission to disclose certain things. He asks the protagonist if he killed the monster, to which Chiansu replies affirmatively. The man then says he'll tell the truth. They are looking for skilled people like him because the police chief went out on patrol and disappeared. Kiansu realizes the mission won't be easy and questions why no one is looking for him. The man explains that they don't have enough people to both protect the area and search for the chief. Chiansu asks if he can take a look at the chief's office, approaching and saying they don't need to hide anything from him. After all, they don't have time, and the more information he has, the better. Sweating, the man agrees, and a while later, Chiansu enters the temporary office. He tells the chat to keep an eye out for clues, but no one finds anything. Then he sees a map with a mark on it. He knows that place is not far from there. At that moment, someone is behind him. He asks who it is, and the person says they heard he's looking for the chief. The guy enters and extends his hand, saying he heard the boy defeated a pretty strong monster. The guy introduces himself as Gaiyang and goes for a handshake. However, he oddly exerts a lot of force, asking if Chiansu found anything. The guys in the chat tease Chiansu, calling him too weak. While Chiansu wonders why this jerk is doing that, they hear a scream and everyone runs out, asking what happened. They see some infected among the crowd. People are trying to flee, but once 2 or 3 are bitten, there's no escape. Kiansu wonders why this is happening, and the chat warns that it's going to turn into a mess. He grabs the hammer, thinking he needs to help the people. He heads towards the crowd while the police can't use their guns without hitting civilians. Kiansu takes down the first infected, shouting at the police to use their baitans. He looks back and yells at the officer to do something. Even the restaurant guy says he'll help, holding a frying pan. The guy with the bandana tells Mr. Gaiyang to be careful, but Gaiyang swings the frying pan at the infected. Chiansu turns and takes down a couple more. Gaiyang realizes Chiansu is buying him time to finish the job. If that's the case, he does his part, hitting the infected 3 times with the pan until the police start to assist. Meanwhile, people are shouting to open the gates so they can escape. Seeing everything locked, Chiansu is sure some bastard let an infected in. Chiansu believes the only person with the authority to do that is a police officer who has lost his mind. He tells the live stream that he can't deal with this now, so he's going to find the police chief. He approaches Gaiyang and tells him to keep an eye on the police because he has something to do. Gaiyang looks confused, but Chiansu says there's no time to explain and that he's giving this tip as repayment for Mingyu's kindness. With that, he starts to run and someone asks where he thinks he's going. A policeman blocks him, but Chiansu just says they need to worry about themselves. He returns to grab the bike he was on before and tells the chat that staying there would interfere with his plans. He's sure there's something suspicious about the place marked on the map. A while later, he reaches a container in the middle of the forest. Looking through the windows, there's no one inside, but the floor is full of footprints, making him wonder if it was a bunch of zombies. He turns to the chat and asks when he will receive a new supply chest. The guys respond that they thought he was playing on hard mode. Kiansu says no way, it's already too hard and he needs help. One of them jokes that supplies are paid for, so he'll have to put some money into the game. Kiansu seemed confused about this paid content business, and they told him to check the bottom of the chat. He scrolled down and found a $sign. When he clicked it, he saw that donations were disabled. The chat urged him to activate it immediately. Once he turned it on, he unlocked monetization, and only one sent him 1 Zen. 2 others sent 2 more Zen each, and he was furious that these jerks were hiding this just to make the game harder. With that, he entered the container, which looked like an ordinary house. The chat asked if he was mad at them, and he said he held no grudges. However, he knew very well that there was a lot these guys weren't explaining. He began to wonder why the mark on the map led to this house. Suddenly, zombies appeared out of nowhere at the window, startling him. The aggro was activated, and he realized those footprints really were from zombies. The chat laughed, asking why he was scared of his friends, but the aggro kept increasing. Kiansu saw that he was going to be surrounded and kicked the first zombie at the door. The aggro went to 8 and quickly passed 14. His physical abilities were now increased by 240%. Though if he was surrounded, he was dominating. Then he heard a horn and saw a car approaching. He dodged to avoid being hit and realized it was the same guy who led zombies to the school. The guy was hiding behind the glass, but Chiansu told the trash to come out because he knew who it was. It was Gaiyang, who wondered how this trash dodged like that. Not to mention this damn kid was handling a bunch of zombies on his own. Gaiyang was fuming and said he would bury him in the mud. Chiansu was startled and Gaiyang accelerated. He ran over something and stopped the car, saying he wanted to see how messed up Chiansu was. But it was just a zombie. Someone knocked on the window. It was Chiansu, telling him to open it. Gaiyang was startled, but Chiansu elbowed him. With his physical strength increased to this level, it was easy. Gaiyang moved to the side, grabbed an airsoft gun, and tried to shoot, but Chiansu ducked. Gaiyang accelerated, trying to escape. Looking in the rearview mirror, he saw Chiansu running after him. He couldn't believe it was possible, especially since he was already going 80 miles per hour. Chiansu ran desperately with a chat saying the kid was furious. Gaiyang, enraged, said Chiansu was going to learn a lesson. He found himself near some containers and started to maneuver around them, trying to lose Chiansu. Chiansu calls out to Gaiyang, but the guy reaches into the glove compartment, presses a button, and wishes him good luck. The containers open, revealing they are full of zombies. The chat says that now he's screwed, but Chiansu's aggro is already at 40. Gaiyang accelerates, saying it's too late for Chiansu to regret anything. However, with 500% increased physical ability, Chiansu says he will finish this in 2 minutes. The first zombie goes down quickly, and the sequence begins. Even though he's easily defeating them, there are still many more. He sees that Gaiyang is parked next to a tree and decides that he will kill that bastard first. He runs, approaches, and breaks the window just as Gaiyang is sending a message. Chiansu demands to know where the police chief is. Gaiyang tries to reach for his waist again, but Chiansu stops his hand. The chat warns him to watch out for Gaiyang's left hand, and Chiansu immobilizes him again. Gaiyang asks who this Dan kid is, and Chiansu says he is very loved by his fans. He kicks Gaiyang, saying he's the one driving now. Chiansu takes control of the car, muttering that this idiot has complicated things for him. Gaiyang is left unconscious, drooling. Chiansu finds a pair of handcuffs, and the chat suggests he'll get money if he cucks Gaiyang there. Chiansu is amused by the idea until he sees zombies approaching. He cucks Gaiyang and accelerates the car, plowing through the zombies. Then he realizes he should have paid more attention to the panel. The message had said from the beginning that Police Chief Mayong was at the food school. There was no reason for him to come here, but then he sees a teddy bear crossing the street. He tries to brake but hits the toy, which spins and rolls on the asphalt. The chat laughs, and he asks if they also saw that creepy doll walking. Suddenly, the teddy bear stands up, and he is left bewildered, unsure of what to do. The little monster clearly seems to be looking at him when it suddenly starts to run away. The protagonist asks what the hell that is, and only one explains that it is the only bear. He explains that it's different from a monster and always guides you directly to a reward chest. Chiansu notices Gaiyang starting to wake up, and the chat questions if he's going to follow the teddy bear. Chiansu grabs the taser and asks the chat to type 1 if they want the guy to go back to sleep, and 2 if they want him to use the taser. Everyone types 1, but Chiansu chooses 2, tasering Gaiyang back into unconsciousness. He gets out of the car. The teddy bear walks through the forest, and Chiansu follows, eventually finding the reward chest. The problem is that to open the chest, he needs to spend 5 of the zens he received. The shield icon indicates it's probably not a weapon. The chat urges him to stop stalling and just open it because it's getting tedious. He decides to ignore them and opens it. What he finds is an incredible flashlight. He feels a bit disappointed and says it was a waste. However, with no other option, he puts it in his pocket because it's time to return to the school. Back at the school, people are commenting on how incompetent one must be to let a zombie slip through. Chiansu says he didn't have any problem with the situation because he was there the whole time. He tells them not to worry too much and to keep the citizens calm. Someone calls for Chiansu, saying there's something that needs his attention. In a corner, he questions if they contacted Vyongo, who says they need to relocate the police. Chiansu imagines it's the fault of that damned kid. He says it's okay, and that he will handle the police chief because the 3 of them are in this together. What he didn't know was that Gaiyang was there on the stairs listening to everything. Those bastards were indeed up to something. Gaiyang saw the men heading to the construction annex. There, another officer found Gaiyang's jeep. When they checked, they found him unconscious and handcuffed. Gaiyang was now running, certain that Chiansu was right. He needed to talk to the boy until a hand came across his face. It was Chiansu, saying he had found him. Chiansu asked what he discovered, and Gaiyang grabbed him, asking if he knew everything already. He explained that the police chiefs were in the basement and had people guarding the door. The scene shifts to Chiansu at the door, listening to the conversation inside. Chiansu says the guy knows how to take a beating, but asks him to stop. The guy prepares the taser while Chiansu is at the door, just observing. Then someone suggests in the chat that he should get a zen if he kicks the door in. With that, he opens the door and kicks the guy in the back. The guy falls to the ground like a fool, but earns Chiansu a zen. Chiansu stands up and reaches to pull out a weapon, but Chiansu stops his hand and asks if he knows who he is. Kneeling, Chiansu says he is the sense of humanity the guy lost. The guy tries to turn the gun, but Chiansu blocks his arm. After missing several shots, the guy clicks once more, but no bullets come out. Chiansu smiles, asking if that was the last one. He punches him in the face, saying that was for Mingyu. He hits him again on the chin, saying that's for the police, and a final blow, saying this one is for everything he had to go through. He sees the police chief unconscious and demands the keys be handed over. The guy reaches for his back, trying to grab the taser, but Chiansu hits him with the same taser. Chiansu remarks that it's too much of a coincidence that they have identical ones. He pushes him, telling him to say hi to Gaiyang. The chat urges Chiansu to finish him off, but he says there are more people coming, so it's not over yet. Chiansu stands up and looks to the side. As another guy passes by, he quickly strikes and neutralizes him. The chat is impressed by his cold-blooded efficiency, and Chiensu comments that the guy was too loud. He earns another batch of Zens and feels proud of himself. A voice in the background asks if he really killed a police officer. Suddenly, he turns around and says it's time to finish this. He approaches the guy, asking if he has any preference for how he wants to die. The guy pleads for him to wait, but Chiensu says it will be quick. He offers a choice. Start with the arm, leg, or chest, or maybe the last option. He smiles, saying the guy looks very scared for someone who shot at him earlier. He receives another Zen and smiles in thanks. As the guy screams, it seems he's done for. The chat laughs, saying the guy even went himself. Chiensu, embarrassed, asks what the guy is doing. Meanwhile, outside, people notice something and turn around. It's Chiensu bringing the real police chief. He tells the officers that the traitors are tied up in the basement. The other officers run to check, and now Chiensu feels he has finally resolved the situation. He looks at the panel, which warns that staying in the same area for too long is dangerous. The next morning, he's full from eating in one of the cabins. Reflecting on how much things had improved in the past day, he opens the panel and finds the information about staying in the same place very odd. He asks the chat how long is too long, but they seem unwilling to answer. Chiensu gets up and stands in front of a car when someone calls out to him. It's the police chief, who asks why he's leaving already. The boy asks if there's a problem, and the chief offers to provide some supplies if he's really going. After all, he helped the people a lot. Chiensu recalls the moment he asked if the chief was really just going to expel the traitors, pointing out that those guys tried to take his life. The chief explains that it's hard to take the lives of two people who were once his comrades. Chiensu says not to worry, he'll handle it. The next scene shows Chiensu speeding in a car with the two traitors tied up in the back. The officers beg him to stop, but he says he's not in the mood. As the chat says he's fixing things, the first officer gets bitten. After reaching almost 80 miles per hour, he stops. Seeing that no one is tied up anymore, he says that unfortunately, a little accident happened. Back in the present, the chief thanks Chiensu, who says he wouldn't refuse some supplies. The chief agrees and even offers the car, asking him not to leave without saying goodbye to everyone. Our boy sits in the car with the flashlight, wondering what it's for. The chat tells him not to stress and just wait to see what happens. He agrees and eventually falls asleep. He wakes up suddenly with an extreme feeling of cold. He has no idea how long he slept, but the air conditioning wasn't even on. Then he sees something approaching in the rearview mirror. Under a cloak is a skeletal creature. The chat warns that it has finally arrived. Chiensu immediately accelerates, drifts, and tries to get away. The police ask him to wait, but he just speeds past. He tells the chat to warn him next time instead of laughing at him. He looks and sees the creature has vanished. What he doesn't know is that it's right beside the window. The rearview mirror shatters and he accelerates again to put some distance between them. The chat tells him he'll need to move to another region. Otherwise, he won't be able to escape it. The monster suddenly appears in front of him and he crashes into a pillar. The airbag deploys, but Chiensu is badly shaken. The creature slowly approaches. Chiensu gets out of the car, pulls out his gun, and fires a shot. However, the monster is immortal. Seeing that it doesn't work, he starts running. After a while, he finds himself exhausted in a corridor. The chat comments that it looks like he's going to die today. The monster appears again in front of him and lunges. He uses the flashlight and the creature seems to shield itself. Being a gamer, he knew this kind of item had some utility. He uses this moment to run out the window and jumps onto a bicycle. The problem is that the tire is flat and he falls, injuring his knee. The monster approaches again. He throws the flashlight and keeps running. He tries firing more shots, but the creature continues to follow. Then he notices the monster and is suddenly stopped. Seeing a line on the ground, he understands. That's the limit of where the monster can go. He says this is the last shot and the creature disintegrates. However, our boy isn't doing well and collapses to the ground. Then something nearby catches his attention. A light flickers on and off repeatedly. He's curious, but everyone warns that it's definitely a trap. Chiensu says he has to check it out because it looks like Morse code. As he approaches, he throws himself in front and tells the person to stop. The person is Minchul Yang, who raises his hand saying he's not a bad person and asking Chiensu not to shoot. While Chiensu asks if he's a cop, the chat comments that they finally found someone more foolish than the protagonist. Chiensu asks if Minchul is alone and he says yes. Chiensu demands the flashlight, but Minchul hesitates. Chiensu points his gun and asks if he's really going to take that long. Reluctantly, Minchul hands over the flashlight and Chiensu asks for his backpack. Minchul pleads, saying it's all he has to eat, and if he gives it away, he's as good as dead. After some time, everything is on the ground and Chiensu says they have the same things. Poor Minchul is almost in tears, saying it's all he has. However, Chiensu cruelly tells the boy to strip down to his clothes. Later, as he's dressing again, he asks if Chiensu will believe him now. Chiensu wants to know how a kid like him survived without carrying any weapons. He asks if Minchul is working with others and acting as bait. Chiensu tells the chat to keep an eye on the boy's face and turns around, saying they will separate. Minchul then speaks up, saying he suffered a lot to get there and that all of his friends are dead. The only reason he's alive is because he's a coward. The chat comments that he seems sincere. Chiensu asks if that's true, and Minchul confirms it. Chiansu says okay and tells him to follow, stating he can't ignore a junior needing help. In the next scene, a guy is pinned down by a frog, wondering where Chiansu is. The poor guy is running from the big mouth monster and asks where it came from. Minchul Yang ignores him and tells him to turn left. The monster stumbles and crashes into a building. Minchul turns and tells Chiansu they will do the same thing near a stream. Chiansu smiles, telling him to worry about himself. They pass by an excavated area, walking along the edge. The monster tries to follow but ends up tripping and falling. They see a giant tongue blocking their path ahead, and Chiansu tells Minchul to duck when he gives the signal. As soon as he speaks, they both duck, and the tongue sweeps past. However, the monster was following closely and ended up with its mouth full. With that, the frog got angry, and the monster pulled it with its tongue. While the two creatures fought, Chiansu and Minchul took the opportunity to escape. Chiansu smiled, thinking now it's clear how this kid survived. In the next scene, Chiansu is exhausted, asking if this tandem bike is Minchul's big plan. Minchul just tells him to keep pedaling, and Chiansu says he'll try. They are almost at their destination, a place with a good amount of resources. Minchul asks if he can ask something and inquires if Chiansu knows about Division 7.5. He explains that when he went looking for his friends, all he found was a note saying they were with that division. Chiansu responds that he's heard of them but doesn't know much. However, he's thoughtful because that's the same division that took his father. After a while, they arrive at a building. As they approach, a car comes and almost runs them over. Chiansu gets off the bike, saying it's never easy. He knocks on the window, and the chat asks if it's a zombie. He sees the guy is human and his name is Youngjin Cho. He pulls him out of the car and throws him to the ground. Chiansu starts searching the car, saying he should have at least brought a rifle, but there's nothing useful in there. Youngjin pulls a knife, telling Chiansu not to steal anything. Chiansu kicks him, telling him to shut up. Youngjin apologizes, saying he can take whatever he wants. Chiansu grabs the knife and says it looks like Youngjin is a deserter. He asks if he abandoned his comrades. Youngjin says no. In fact, everyone in his base is dead. Minchul asks if Youngjin is really a soldier, and Chiansu says you can tell just by looking at him. Then he notices something, goes to Youngjin's neck, and pulls out his dog tag. Holding it in his hand, he tells Youngjin to recite any service number. The poor guy starts sweating and slowly recites the numbers. Chiansu says he got it right, but still seems suspicious. Finally, Chiansu asks if he knows anything about Division 7.5. Youngjin says no, he's never even heard of it. Chiansu stands up, and Minchul says it's dangerous to stay there. He gets into the car and tells them to jump over the wire. Looking at Youngjin, calling him useless, they wonder if they should take him. Youngjin pleads to be taken along because his legs are broken, and it's impossible for him to survive alone. The protagonist notes that Youngjin had previously asked to be left alone. Youngjin explains that he thought they would harm him. The chat comments that Chiansu would never save anyone, to which he replies that it's not fair. He tells Minchul to open the gate, and that he can bring Youngjin if he wants to. Minchul agrees, and they head toward the building. Seeing 4 cars in the parking lot, Chiansu wonders why the gate was closed. Opening the door, he tells everyone to be cautious as there might be someone inside. They walk in, and everything is silent. They take Youngjin to the infirmary, and Chiansu says he'll look around. Minchul, acting like a scared child, pleads not to be left alone. Chiansu reassures him, saying he might not abandon him. Climbing the stairs, he asks the chat what they think about leaving the kid behind. The opinions are divided, with one person saying the child seems genuine. Then he hears something, a voice talking about a safe place. When he opens the door, he sees a bunch of communicators, surprisingly still powered. The message states that Division 7.5 is heading to Jeju Island. Finally, Chiansu has a clue and asks the system to open the information panel. It instructs him to escape the city via the train station. He runs back, calling for Minchul, but upon reaching the room, he finds Youngjin alone and asks where the kid is. Youngjin says Minchul heard some noises and went to check. Angry, Chiansu demands to know how he could leave the boy alone, then rushes out. He realizes he needs a taxi key to get out of there. Searching through papers, he realizes that people had turned off the lights despite having power, indicating something was wrong. As he looks for the keys, he hears a scream and runs. He finds Youngjin fallen on the floor and asks what happened. Youngjin asks for help getting up, saying he heard noises from the basement. At that moment, footsteps are heard coming up the stairs. Both are startled when a man uses Minchul as a hostage. Minchul tells Chiansu to run, but Chiansu refuses. He points a knife at the man, demanding he release Minchul. The man, sweating, claims Minchul is a thief who broke into his company. Pointing at both of them, he accuses them of being thieves, stating they have no more drivers left. Now Chiansu understands why he couldn't find any keys. Youngjin was scared, and Chiansu blamed the company owner for sending his taxi drivers. He tried to explain that he wasn't a thief. All brightly, he claimed that, in fact, he was a new taxi driver there to help. The chat was confused by this, but Chiansu was trying to convince the man that he really was one of the best drivers and wanted to help in this crisis. The company owner, who had already lost his mind, said they really needed more drivers and asked where his resume was. Taken by surprise, Chiansu was a bit confused. The man said that for an interview, he needed to have brought a resume. Chiansu said he had already brought it and that it was in the office, asking Youngjin to fetch it. Youngjin went, and the company owner said Chiansu was very hardworking for wanting a job at such a time. Youngjin brought back a paper, telling Chiansu he found the most similar one. The owner just stared at it. Chiansu then told Minchul to come quickly. He gave the guy a shoulder bump and lunged towards them. Our boy took Youngjin's crutch and hit the company owner. He immediately instructed Minchul to restrain the man's legs and arms. They found the key and ran to the car, telling Youngjin to drive. The man asked where to go, and Chiansu said to head for the train station. But then he saw people fleeing desperately, with a giant eye on their backs, and couldn't believe it. A gigantic spider-like creature was chasing everyone. He told Youngjin he had faith he would get them out of there. Poor Youngjin had no idea what that thing was. The monster came their way, and Youngjin just accelerated the car. He took a turn, but the problem was there was nowhere to escape. At that moment, the company owner had freed himself and called them a bunch of bastards. Chiansu told Youngjin to turn the car and head back to the main entrance. The owner was screaming for his taxi until he saw it coming with a monster. Right in front, they managed to drift, and the creature collided with a building. They sped down the street. In the car, Youngjin asked if Chiansu really intended to use that guy as bait. Exhausted, Chiansu said the man was indeed a great company CEO. Minchul commented that in the end, that was the best option for all of them to stay alive. Then Chiansu noticed something. Ahead of them was that blue line. As they passed it, it registered another checkpoint. Now the chat could give him missions, with harder missions offering better rewards. The live stream was celebrating, saying the guy who always maxes out cards was going to shine. Chiansu asked the chat if Minchul could see them. The chat said he couldn't see or hear them when Chiansu spoke only to the chat. Looking at the system, Chiansu said he didn't see any functions listed and asked what it was. The guy who maxed out his card donated a Zen and said Chiansu would understand soon. Chiansu put his hand out and said he was very anxious. Then he heard footsteps. Looking back, the creature was following them. He turned to Youngjin and asked if he could go faster, but Youngjin said he was already at maximum speed. The problem was the creature was gaining on them, and Chiansu wondered if it was faster in a straight line. He asked Minchul if he knew another route, but Minchul said no. Chiansu told the boy to think hard, and Minchul suggested going up the mountain on the left. Youngjin said it would be slower, but Chiansu insisted, saying they would die otherwise. As they ascended, Chiansu noticed they were gaining distance. However, Youngjin warned about a sharp turn ahead. Chiansu asked Minchul, who said just to keep going because the creature wouldn't be able to stop its momentum. Chiansu turned to the chat and asked for a mission to get a reward. The chat said he was doomed, and Chiansu started to despair. Then the guy with the maxed out card put up a new mission. He needed to roll down the taxi window and start taunting the creature. In return, he would get a buff that would keep the car on track for 5 seconds. Chiansu immediately rolled down the window and started yelling that the creature was ugly as hell. The poor monster was left gaping. Chiansu continued shouting insults, and Minchul asked what kind of craziness this was. Chiansu kept yelling, daring the monster to try and kill him. The mission was completed, and the buff was applied. They saw the curve sign, and Youngjin made the turn. Thanks to the buff, the car stayed on the road while the creature was flown off. It wasn't just a curve, but a cliff, and despite the sign, the engineers deserved praise. Youngjin couldn't believe they hadn't been thrown off despite the creature bumping them. Minchul was exhausted, and Chiansu thanked the guy with the maxed out card, who said Chiansu now owed him one. Sometime later, Chiansu says he believed there would be more people because of the radio message. However, strangely, there isn't a single person at the train station. They decide to hide the car somewhere, go the rest of the way on foot. Youngjin mentions the zombies, but Chiansu says he'll take care of it. Minchul asks if he's sure, and Chiansu reassures him. Chiansu then shouts for the creatures, commanding them to come closer. 3 monsters turn towards him, increasing his power to 1.4. He begins to realize just how powerful this ability is. He easily takes down the creatures until one sneaks up behind him, but he tells them not to worry and swiftly deals with it. The chat comments on his bravery and growth, and he tells them to stop saying such cringe things. Nevertheless, he feels that somehow his strength and reflexes have increased. As they walk, he sees a man calling out for someone named Chan Guk-jong. Chiansu knows this is the name of the city's mayor and wonders if this man works for him. He asks the chat if he should save the man, and the guy with the maxed out card says yes. Despite most saying no, Chiansu decides he'll have to save him. The zombie is about to kill the man when it suddenly falls dead on top of him. The man, crying desperately, explains that the mayor had left him to die. He suggested they find another station because of the monsters, but the mayor refused, threw him out of the car, and told him to look around, leaving him in this situation. Chiansu says it seems they'll find the mayor at the train station, and the man confirms. He asks if the man was working as a bodyguard, but he says no. The mayor had hired different people for protection. Chiansu gets excited, thinking it's an important story mission. In front of the station, the man says he doesn't see his friends. Chiansu reassures him, saying they must be inside, introduces himself as Chiansu Huang. Suddenly, the man stops and points at something, asking what it is. Chiansu notices it looks like a child, and the man is about to call out to her. Chiansu quickly covers his mouth, asking what he's thinking. Clearly, a child wouldn't be alone in a place like this. Up close, the chat says he's the unluckiest guy ever. Chiensu questions if it's that dangerous and asks for a reward. The chat says no, but the maxed out card guy donates 100 zens. Hyunsu knows that 1 zen is worth 10,000 Korean won, which means about $700. He covers the man's mouth, grateful for the substantial donation. Hyunsu tells the guy to stay quiet and that he'll handle it because that girl is definitely not human. However, the girl suddenly turns and starts running. The guy, terrified, begins to descend the stairs desperately, but falls to the ground right in front of the monster. He yells that there's another one, and in that moment, he is devoured. Hyunsu can't understand why the guy did that, and the chat comments that she is a silent girl. He realizes that by the name, she must be a type of monster that reacts to sound. Then someone named the new master puts up a mission. Hyunsu cannot move until the girl passes him and will receive an ability that makes someone deaf for a minute. He knows this is very risky, and she passes by closely. The chat asks if she's looking right at him, and he stands still, sweating profusely. Finally, she passes, and the mission's effect is applied. Hyunsu then goes to the guy's body, which is in good condition, and takes his wallet to check the name. However, as he turns, the guy starts getting up. Hyunsu quickly finishes him off again. He runs as far away as possible, praying the monster isn't nearby. Then he sees one of the silent girls breaking down a door and hears Minchul's voice screaming inside. He sees the girl and contemplates. He starts to walk away, but the new master gives him a mission to rescue Minkyul and Youngjin from the bathroom. Seeing it's worth 20 zen, he knows it's worth it. He heads to a nearby diner, and the chat asks if he's that hungry. He looks at the timers and asks if the chat understands his plan. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, the two poor guys are trying to survive the silent girls. Then Chiensu appears at the door. The timer hits 0 and starts beeping. The two monsters turn around and Chiensu runs out, throwing another timer to the other side. He throws 2 more in quick succession, leading the monsters away. With the creatures gone, Minchul finally relaxes. The chat asks why he didn't use the mission reward ability. He still has the skill to make someone deaf for a minute, but the problem is he has to touch them, and he knows he'd be cut in half if he got close to something like that. At that moment, the army guy informs him that his ankle is broken. Chiensu tells Minchul to help, and with that, the mission is complete. Then he hears a groan behind him and turns to see the army guy. Then he realizes that Youngjin seems to be starting to transform. His leg wasn't broken after all. Chiensu asks Youngjin if he knows what's happening. Remembering the guy who transformed earlier, Chiensu gets angry that they went through all this trouble for this to happen in the end. He grabs Minchul and starts running. Seeing Youngjin from a distance, Chiensu apologizes. Minchul asks what's wrong, and Chiensu says it's too late for Youngjin. They go to check the trains but don't find any useful information. Then they hear a noise and see Youngjin pointing to the side. Chiensu turns his head while Youngjin is relieving himself and notices that the train is strangely still functioning. Looking at Youngjin, Chiensu says he will never forget him. All he needs to do is remember this guy and finish the game to thank him. At the station, Chiensu tells Minchul to listen if he doesn't want to die. The train is bound to bring things they don't want, so he must stay on guard. Minchul says he understands, and an announcement is made that the train is arriving. They spot a wooden crate and decide to hide in it. The train approaches, and as it passes, it takes the creatures with it. At that moment, another locomotive passes by. Someone had apparently used the front train to lure the monsters. Chiensu knows that train was waiting for the mayor. He exits the crate, tells Minchul to stay put, and runs toward the train. He approaches slowly and sees the conductor standing there. A girl appears and asks why the damn mayor isn't there. Chiensu recognizes her from somewhere and remembers seeing her on the internet as an officer who was the hope for a better world. Her name is Suyeon Jang, and she's questioning if those bastards from Division 7.5 are deceiving her. Chiensu thinks her personality is different from the interview, but he needs to get on that train. Seeing Minchul coming out of the crate, he knows they could both immobilize her, but it would be better to have her help. Minchul says it's just one person, so they can handle it. However, as Chiensu is about to approach, she asks who he is. Minchul is coming to strike, and Chiensu asks where he got that, telling everyone to stop. She says it seems like he thinks he can steal the train because she's alone. Chiensu says she misunderstood and shows her a card. She sees that the card says he works as security for the mayor, but doubts he's that tough. Chiensu says he has something to tell her, and the chat says here comes the craziness. He then announces that the mayor is dead. Suyeon looks confused and asks what he's talking about, especially since they had to come here attracting a bunch of monsters. Suyeon says things just got complicated and his sound echoes through the station. Chiensu suggests they leave, but she insists she was hired to retrieve the mayor. Chiensu explains that he's the only one with information about the mayor and will explain once they reach the base. She hesitates for a second but agrees, saying she'll take him to the shelter. Chiensu insists they need to bring his friend along. She looks at Minchul and says he doesn't look like a city employee. Chiensu asks if she thinks it's right to abandon a student in the middle of nowhere. She relents but says she'll confiscate that pipe. With that, they start the train and begin to leave. At that moment, they see someone coming down. It's Youngjin, and Chiensu thanks him, saying they survived because of him. Just then, he's shoved to the ground as some guys come down the stairs. Hyunsu sees it's the mayor, shouting for the train to stop. Soo-yeon steps out of the cabin, asking what that noise is. The mayor reaches out, telling them to stop the train because she's there to save him. She asks Hyunsu what's going on, and he tells her to look at what's following them. A bunch of silent girls are chasing them, and if they stop, everyone will die. She gets angry but returns to the train. The mayor calls them a bunch of bastards and asks how they dare leave him like this. Strangely, before dying, he says the code is the end. He falls to the ground and is devoured. Hyunsu asks the chat if that wasn't the best option. The chat agrees, saying Youngjin is now different. Hyunsu tells Minchul to get in. They go to the cabin and Soo-yeon demands an explanation, saying they'll be thrown out otherwise. The protagonist brazenly says everything he said is true and the mayor is dead. She asks if he thinks she's an idiot, and Hyunsu admits he never actually met the mayor. She slams him against the wall, demanding to know who he is. Hyunsu apologizes, introducing himself as Hyunsu. She questions why he lied and asks what his plan is. Hyunsu tells her that he's just a passenger on this train and never claimed to be the person on the card. He only showed it. She yells in his face, saying he deserves to be thrown out the window. Hyunsu explains that he only got the card because the original owner was left for dead. He knew the place was full of creatures and thought it was necessary to get them out of there. She kicks his foot, causing him to stumble, and warns that he still deceived her. Hyunsu recalls her interview where she mentioned people going through tough times. He says he's one of those people. She asks how he knows her name and gets flustered, saying it was just a small article. Hyunsu doesn't understand why she's suddenly blushing but continues to praise her for being a beacon of hope in a new world. She turns away embarrassed, saying that interview wasn't seen by many. She's unsure if he saw the article because he supports the police or was just bored. But then she says what's done is done, and they'll have to work together now. Hyunsu asks if she guarantees they're heading to Daejeon, and she confirms it. He then questions her about Division 7.5 and if she knows anything about them. Soo-yeon explains that during the apocalypse, they are responsible for a like on this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.